So hello and welcome everybody. I can see that we are slowly gathering the people joining the webinar today. So I think we can hold on just a little bit more and we can start with the webinar. Slowly gathering the people joining the webinar. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar today. My name is Rick van Werven. I'm marketing manager at ProfitUp. And today I have the pleasure to be joined by Mike Penaki, Chris Greer, and our very own John Maudlin. So Mike Penaki is a network specialist doing troubleshooting around the US and Northern America. Is a great expert in the field, as you'll see in a bit. Chris Greer, very similar. I'm sure most people of you have heard the name, but he's a Wireshark trainer and a network analyst. John Maudlin is a senior systems engineer at ProfitUp, so he has a big technical background. Will be able to show us some of the dashboards within IOTA and give us a good tour of the product. Today's idea is not to give you death by PowerPoint, but we really want to give an informal webinar on basic cybersecurity and the tools that you can use around this to solve these many issues that revolve around the topic. And then in general, we want to give you also a tour of how we can fix certain malicious traffic, or have a look at malicious traffic and see how you can dissect this. So we have a bit of a trouble with getting video working for everybody. So we're just going to assign webinar host to switch this around so we can share the screens that way. But basically, as a short introduction, we all know that nothing is the same when it comes to network security. Things are constantly on the move. Hackers are evolving. And so should we, basically. So basically, this means that we should continuously monitor and learn what's going on or happening on our networks, and basically establish a baseline so we can also learn and see what's different from over time. So Chris, you're basically a first responder in the field. What's basically your input here? You have any input on this? Any experience?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Rick?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. I think that was a great intro. And I think what you said is very true. It's today we're in a landscape now where monitoring and really making sure that we stay on top of what's happening to the traffic on our networks. It's not an option anymore. I think in the past, on different webinars with ProfitUp, we've talked about the analogy of security cameras, right? Now anymore, everybody's got them. We know we need them. We understand what they do, even setting them up, configuring them properly, pointing them in the right direction. But if our networks don't have a similar type of thing, right, to watchdog the traffic, to collect it, to be able to see indicators of compromise as they start to ramp up, then we're behind the ball. So now more than ever, it's very important.
Exactly. And why not just, let's say, use a span and a laptop? It's a rhetorical question, but I'm curious to see what your opinion is on this.
For sure. That's one way that we could get a view into the traffic on our networks, for sure. We can span traffic, we can pump it over to some system that's running Wireshark and hope for the best. But anymore, we need to understand where that method has its weaknesses. So with a span port, we're relying on a system that's not born and bred for doing packet analysis. It's a method that allows us to see into the traffic stream for sure, but really it's best effort if you think about it. So really putting a tap in at key locations, and that tap having the analysis data fed to a device that is born and bred to collect it and analyze it, it gives us a leg ahead on being able to stay on top of intrusions. So that's really the best way to do it. Definitely having a tap in key locations and then hardware base capture.
Exactly. And what would you say is kind of the balance between performance monitoring and cybersecurity? Because I have the feeling that they're kind of related in a way as well.
Yeah, they are really. I mean, I think for packet people, we kind of grew up in the network space and tracking down problems and trying to find slowness and performance issues, disconnections. But now the network engineer and packet analyst needs to pivot to become more of an expert on what's going on from an intrusion perspective to keep our eye on security. So I think the two are really related, and it's a hat that we need to start wearing more and more as hacks are on the rise, malware's on the rise, and this isn't just something that we can keep kicking down the road.
Right. So you're saying that basically as engineers, have looked at performance and we've looked at packets and learned a thing or two there. And from there, we can kind of pivot this information and see what we've learned and apply it to also the security side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's because, the gold standard, I think we all know packets don't lie. Packets are the gold standard, and that's true now more than ever. So I'd absolutely agree with that, Rick.
Nice. So I'm gonna have a look at setting Mike Benaki as a host here. Let me see if this is possible. So Mike, if I set you to host, can you share your screen? Because I'm very interested in getting a little bit inside view of your lab. You have a few of the product of the ProfTap products in the background. I can see.
I do. In fact, we've got the the IOTA back here. We've got TAPS. We've got a Profi Shark back there. But I think let's flip over because you were talking about span ports and things like that. So we are going to flip our video over here to here's my little lab setup, and back there, right there, what we've got is we've got a booster, and the booster allows us to tap into 4 1 gig connections at a time, and these 1 gig connections then are aggregated into a single 10 gig connection. We've got that connected to an IOTA. So as we're going through and I get into some of the dashboards and so on in a little bit, the information we're going to be looking at is being collected live from that IOTA right there. So the neat thing is that is tapped in both on the inside and the outside of my network. So by aggregating that traffic on both sides of my firewall, this allows me to see what's coming into the outside. I can see what's being blocked. I can see what's being allowed through. And I can even go so far as to measure the latency of that device, right? You were talking about performance a little bit. Since I'm capturing packets on the both sides and they're being aggregated in that booster, gives me a very accurate view of how much latency that device in the middle is adding to those packets.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for showing a bit of an inside lab view there. So I think that's part of like a placement of IOTA, of course. So we can place it together with a booster. We can place it together or just as a single device in line. So just maybe for those that are new to IOTA, it's, let's say, a twofold solution. So basically with IOTA, you get the hardware. So it's the box that Mike just showed. You can plug it in line as an internal. Well, let's see if Mike, if you speak, I think you will show up on screen as well.
All right. So if we take a look, here's the IOTA. And in fact, let's do this. Let me switch over. Let me turn on some lights. Alexa, turn on the bench lights. So let's switch over here real quick. And for people that haven't really seen the IOTA, know what the IOTA is, let me just zoom in on that real quick and we'll flip over here. So there is the IOTA. And what this is, what I have right here has a 1 terabyte drive in it. It's got a CPU operating system. And what we've got is there are 2 ports here. These can operate in tap mode, which is a fault tolerant tap in this 1 gig model, or they can be operated independently. so that we can capture in two different spots. But what we're going to see is the information that we're capturing off the wire is being written to the 1 terabyte drive in there. And then we are accessing that through the management port here on the back. And so one of the things that I like about it is that it is easily deployable, right? I can put it out there at a remote site and it gives me that visibility. And I think that when we talk about cybersecurity, one of the big things, excuse me, is visibility. And we need to be able to see what's going across the wire so we can begin to analyze that. And Wireshark is no good if we don't have packets to analyze with it. And so, or these dashboards we're looking at. So what's happening in that IOTA is not only are we capturing the packets and writing them to disk, but we're writing metadata about those packets to a database. And then we're going to see that we can create dashboards that access that data in the database and give us a summary view of what's going on.
Yeah, and then what you mentioned, IOTA has this internal disk. So what would you say is like the combination of analyzing historical data and cybersecurity, like the ability to reconstruct, right?
Right. I mean, nobody ever says, hey, look, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we're going to get attacked. And so can you put your equipment in there? So the ability to go back in time and see what happened, that's always, the big question. What happened at 2 o'clock yesterday? And especially if you have, for regulatory purposes, you have to go back and show what was compromised, that ability to go back and see what somebody got into and what they didn't get into. And I think that's a big one because, I think of, decades of traveling. If you lose your ticket for a parking garage, they charge you the maximum amount, right? So I need that ticket to prove I was only there for a certain period of time. Well, if I don't have that ticket, I'm going to get charged the maximum amount. So from the standpoint of being able to go back in time, if I'm able to do anything to show what resources and databases and so on were accessed if somebody did get into my system, that can help mitigate any fees and so on that I might have to pay related to that sort of attack.
Right. So I think we've kind of established that it all starts with getting visibility, right? So you need access to the packet, you need access to what's going on the network lines, and before you can start analyzing it. But a big bonus there is that when you capture it, you can go back in time, you can play with it, you can analyze it in different ways, potentially export the data, analyze it anywhere you want, basically. So I think maybe now it's a good time to show, in fact, the dashboards of IOTA and give us a quick tour. I think maybe Mike, you already used the dashboard before with multiple hosts, and you can see where people are coming from, basically.
Yeah, let me share my screen. We'll put my glasses on first so I can see what I'm doing.
Important things first, right?
Yes. Let's see. So we're going to come over here and we will share that. This is the main dashboard that we get to when we go into the IOTA. And this gives us a view of what kind of traffic we can see right there where I started this webcast this morning and the increased traffic. And we can see who's talking to whom. And there's a variety of different dashboards which give us views into this data. So what I did was, in refining my dashboard creation skills, I came in and I created what I call the attack dashboard. But what this is doing is this is going in to that database and it's showing me which ports am I seeing TCP SYNs for on my router. So down here, we can see 443 is big, Redis, that's been really big for quite some time, SSH. So we come up here in the last 3 hours, these are how many TCP SYN packets I've seen for each one of these ports. Now, one of the really neat things is that by utilizing the GeoIP database that's contained within the IOTA, I'm able to map that out to a particular location. So as we come through here, we can start seeing where are these originating from. So if I scroll down, I can see, these different ports. So if I wanted to focus in on port 22, one of the things I could do is I could come in, and when I hover over port 22, I can click on this little magnifying glass. We notice that it creates a filter up here at the top on port 22. Now I can see where port 22 folks are coming from. And as I come down here, now we can start seeing some IP addresses. We can see country codes, protocol, the number of times. So here we've got this one, 45, 144. And I got to tell you, 45 is one that just always kind of cracks me up, because since 1995, I've been involved with Interop, the trade show, worked on it. Chris and I spent a lot of time there together. And they had the whole Class A 45, and then they ended up giving that up. So I always think it's interesting when that's one of the addresses that's trying to get into my network. But now I could even focus in more on that particular device. And, we could come up here and we could zoom in, and it's only as accurate as the GeoIP database, but we could zoom in a little bit. We can get an idea of, where is that originating from? And sometimes this is really accurate. Now, yesterday, John and I were talking back and forth, and I said, John, what I'd love is a dashboard that shows TCP SYN ACKs. So John was kind enough to put a dashboard together for me, and last night I couldn't help but play around with a little bit, John. And let me get rid of some of these filters right here. And so what we see is right here, we've got our client IPs. The big difference with this dashboard is this is showing me TCP SYN acknowledgements. So that's great. People are trying to SSH and telnet into my network, and that's being blocked. That's great. But what I'm really interested in from a cybersecurity standpoint is which connections are being allowed through. So what do we know about a TCP connection? We send a TCP SYN, then we get a SYN acknowledgement back from the server. So what we've done here is we put together a dashboard that shows me how many SYN acknowledgements my firewall's sending back to clients and who those clients are. So now I can see which ports people are able to establish a TCP connection on. Now I've got a web server set up that allows access to some equipment in the lab that uses port 443 and 80. And I've got some PPTP VPN tunnels. So these are the ports that I would expect. So if I started seeing other ports showing up on here, that could indicate that there was a rule on my firewall that was allowing traffic through that I may not even really expect to have allowed through. So in this case, by being able to come in and take a look at which ports are most active, starts giving me a good idea of what's going on. And also, kind of back to the back in time, one of the things that we're always looking for is trends. And we will see that, trends will give us an idea if something has changed. And most of the time when we have a problem in the network, it's because something changed. So here I could start taking a look at over time. We could say, show me the last 24 hours. And I see this little spike in time right there. So this is a case where I may want to go back, and I could bring up a histogram. I could add a histogram tile here, but I could see that I've got this little spike right there. I'm curious about, what that spike is. So we could put a filter together, we could zoom in, and we could start looking at what happened during that spike. So this gives us a way to manipulate that data before we start grabbing the packets. And as Chris mentioned, the packets don't lie. We can get in there and see what happened. But we don't want to go through terabytes worth of packets to find that. So that's a little quick introduction to dashboards there.
Yeah, I think that's nice, very nice introduction. So I think it shows a little bit of the power of what you can do. I think what happened just there between you and John yesterday, you came up with an idea, and you found a dashboard that kind of makes you form a baseline of your network, right? So I'm not trying to steal Chris's thunder in a minute, because he's going to do a demo of showing malicious traffic. But I think one of the big points that Chris Greer usually makes is, really, it's important to establish a baseline to learn what your traffic is. And as you just showed there, Mike, you can very easily, with graphing out the network traffic, you can see specific spikes in network traffic that may be of interest. So you can go back there, filter down on that specific time range, that specific traffic that you want to see, and then you can still export the raw packet data, basically, and analyze anything more deeply if you want. So I just wanted to quickly point out also that I'm sure that whenever you see something here, whatever we showed during the webinar, some of these things might pull up some questions. So feel free to put them in chat and we'll try to go over them. So let us know if you have any questions. Just put them in the chat and we can go over them. So John, I don't know, do you mind sharing any of your dashboard knowledge at this point? John, can you hear us?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey,
Sorry,
John.
you turned on. Let me see if I can. I can't share video right now, Rick, for some reason. But you know, all the points that Mike Panaki just made are really important, and that's one of the things that differentiates the IOTA from some other tools that are out on the market. There's a lot of tools out there that will show you up, down. They will show you time averaged information across the network, but they don't allow you to get the packets. And even when Mike was able to create that dashboard, it shows the TCP syntax, for example, and has that interesting information. And it's great to be able to go back retroactively, like you said, also to go get your interesting traffic. The real power there is being able to filter down exactly what it is that you want to see, whether it's IP address, a combination of IP address and port, a combination of IP address, port, and protocol, and download just those packets so that you can analyze them. Because it's not uncommon to get a lot of traffic when you're trying to capture a problem or a specific issue. You might get, like Mike said, a terabyte of traffic. And of course, trying to go through a terabyte of packets is, not reasonable.
Finding a needle in a haystack, right?
Yeah. So I'm here at the tennis court live.
Nice. We can see you. We can see you. So got
Okay.
good visual.
So the dashboards are really powerful, a feature of what the IOTA does. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So these dashboards, you can modify these pretty easily and you can change views. And one of the real powers there is being able to change it so that you can create a dashboard that fits a specific scenario, like Mike just did. So it's pretty flexible. There's a lot of situations that can happen when you're trying to analyze whether it's troubleshooting a specific problem, whether it's looking at something for cybersecurity reasons, whenever you're going back at packets to look at them. The views of that traffic become very important. And one of the real powers in the IOTA is being able to change your views pretty easily. That dashboard that Mike had up, for example, looks like this. And if I wanted to add something to this, I could copy it over from another dashboard. For example, I could go to the host dashboard here, which is one of the built-in dashboards that comes with IOTA. It gives you a lot of information on it already. But if I want this panel on another dashboard, I can copy it over to the dashboard that I'm working with. And now I have that panel on this dashboard. I can
Okay,
create.
so
my
there's
own-
something I didn't even know, John. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Chris
I'm done.
was
I
doing this
learned
yesterday.
that.
Yeah, you can copy the panels around between dashboards. There's a lot of power in these dashboards, and it's something that other tools on the market, a lot of other tools come with static images and graphs, and that's what you have to use to solve your problem. But with IOTA, you can create your own. Now, the IOTA has something called Grafana built into it. That's an open source Linux-based graphics package. And that graphics package is what we're using here. It's just built into the IOTA. And you can set it up to, look for all kinds of things. Here's a dashboard that shows you traffic from the Netherlands. If you have a specific country you're interested in, the database that handles geolocation is built in. Or Wireshark, you have to install that, manually. It just comes with the IOTA. So it's very easy to use and program just by setting up a little filter for what you want to look at. Of course, you can pick any country you want to. You're troubleshooting DHCP, for example. Here's a dashboard that shows people making DHCP calls on the network using interesting ports 67 and 68. You get all the pertinent information. And what I did here was I took the built-in Explore dashboard, which breaks out all 7 layers of your OSI model. And I copied it, created a new dashboard, and just set up a filter and said, I want to see all the information the Explore dashboard already gives me. And I just want it to show me DHCP traffic. Now I have a way to see all of this interesting information. The Explore dashboard, which is one of the built-in dashboards that IOTA just comes with, breaks out all your layers of your TCP/IP stack. And of course, whatever time frame you have selected up here. So here's your MAC addresses, layer 2. You've got, layer 3, your IP stack, and you've got layer 4 through layer 7, presentation, application, and session layers, all broken out for you as well. And also, Mike pointed out how you can filter on this stuff. Inside
John,
each of these.
a quick question. Now that you mentioned on filtering down traffic, a question came in from Devin. Is it possible that we can do a pre-capture filters with IOTA?
Yes, you can. The 10 gig model of the IOTA has some pre-capture capabilities, and those are right here under filters. You can pre-capture on all of these protocols. This has been there in all of the revisions of the 10 gig IOTA, had this where you could specify a certain protocol or exclude certain protocols that you don't want to capture. But recently, in the most recent revision of the software, we've released this capability also. So you can now filter on a MAC address or IP address or a port number, which is a huge savings on your storage if you're capturing a lot of traffic. That's probably why you asked. And we got that request from people out in the field, and that's why it got added. The 1 gig model doesn't have this capture engine, so it doesn't do this. And, just to point out, there are 4 models of these IOTAs now, where we have the 1 gig and the 10 gig base models that have a 1 terabyte SSD built in, but we also now have the 1 gig plus and the 10 gig plus model. Those plus models have built-in GPS, PPS for hardware time syncing with satellite. In case you have a situation where NTP is not available, we have some customers that need that. And it also has an optional 1 or 2 terabyte SSD that's like Samsung Evo. You can just slide it in a tray in the front and you can swap it out. You can remove it. You can replace it with your own. And that's a really nice feature on the plus models. And both the 1 gig and the 10 gig have a plus model that do that, have the GPS and the swappable hard drives. So on this,
I think that the swappable hard drives are also a nice point, security related, right? So we have implementations where traffic is captured on certain sites where it cannot leave the premises. So it's an important, let's say, extra benefit that you can swap the hard drive, destroy it, erase it, do whatever your protocol is there.
yeah,
but
that's
an extra opportunity for security there.
Yeah, some of our customers have a requirement where they have to take the hard drive out and destroy it when they're done. And baselining is another good example. You can take a hard drive, put it in, baseline a network, take that hard drive out, and that's your baseline. Pop in another drive for your troubleshooting, and you can always go back to your baseline. Or you can use it for storage, of course.
Yeah.
So,
John, thank you for this quick overview of dashboards and yeah, the different things that we can do with it. I'm thinking maybe now would be very interesting to, now that we've seen the dashboards, we know a bit about the hardware of IOTA. Why don't we have Chris go over a bit of malicious traffic and see how he approaches this, and yeah, share some of his knowledge here.
All right. Sounds good. Here, I'm just going to see if I can start up my video.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can.
I've been here lurking into the shadows listening to John and Mike. Nice job, guys. And John, every time I see you navigate the IOTA, I learn something. He's definitely the dashboard master.
I really like the IOTA. You know, it's a really cool sensor. It does so much for you when it comes to troubleshooting.
Look at that. Hey, everybody.
And there we go. We have a visual on Chris.
I exist. All right, good. All right. So nice to have everybody on. And I think something that maybe I'd like to bring to the party, one part of the discussion is, yeah, being a Wireshark analyst, something I do a lot is I'm looking at packet captures. Even as a consultant, you know, people are sending me packet captures. Hey, Chris, what's weird? What looks strange here? And so what I'd like to do is actually show how the IOTA can complement analysis of, if I'm just doing something in Wireshark or any other tool, really, I can send that traffic, or I can upload that traffic to the IOTA, and then I can use it in a post-capture type of scenario as well. And that's actually what we're going to do with some malware. So let me just share my screen here. And Rick, maybe you can just let me know if you see me okay.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
A few things changing on my screen so we can see. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. So with the IOTA, let me just draw your attention over on the left. We have a few options that I could click through, and one of them is Data Vault, and I can go to captured files. And something that I really like about captured files is this is where, if I don't have live data coming into the IOTA constantly, let's just say, for example, maybe I want to analyze an event that happened, and for whatever reason, either the IOTA was in a different place, or maybe it was at that remote site, or maybe my buddy stole it and he was using it for his analysis, right? And I didn't have an opportunity to actually have it right there live capturing an event. This is where I can actually take a PCAP and I can put it on the IOTA, and then I can say, okay, go ahead and analyze. What I have to do, if that's the case, once I go back to the dashboard, see, this one's not live collecting, but what I can do is I can just go back in time. I can say, okay, instead of just looking at the last 3 hours, this is where I'd have to go back to that time range where that PCAP was actually captured, and then I can actually do my analysis. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip over to a dashboard. I just called it malware analysis. And what this does is it actually jumps back in time to the point in time when this happened. It does that automatically. I can save that time index as a part of the dashboard. Really appreciate John showing me how to do that, because I kept going back when I was flipping through dashboards. I kept having to go back in time to do some deeper analysis. So he showed me that feature. Fantastic stuff, because now I can take a look. Okay, this was the event that did happen, and I got that from that PCAP. Now, just to show you a few features that are on this dashboard that are useful to me as an analyst, I think something that I hear a lot, or I'm asked a lot with people doing this with Wireshark, is, all right, where do I start? I've got a gig of traffic captured. I open it up in Wireshark and I see a ton of packets. And how am I supposed to find the 3 that matter in the million? Right. So that's something that constantly I'm asked. So it's interesting because coming from the Wireshark space, there's a workflow that I've developed when I'm doing PCAP analysis that I was able to mimic here on this dashboard, but this is doing it. It's a whole lot easier to interpret using the IOTA. That's why for me, it's a complementary tool 100% when I'm shredding through packets. One of the first things that I like to do, and the two other gentlemen have already showed you this for the viewers, is that server location. So here right away, just with a peek, I can take a look and see, okay, do I do business in these other countries? Are these places that I would typically expect to see traffic from my company or from my environment going to and from? And, for me, I mean, I'm physically located in San Diego. As a business, Packet Pioneer, I don't usually have a whole lot of customers out here in these areas. That might draw my attention. But also just to get a general baseline, right? So on any given Monday, is that something that I typically see? And that's also going back to live capture. It's nice to be able to see, is this something that was unusual, or is it something that's happening today as well? Well, beneath that, something else I can do is I can also spot for strange port numbers, right? Just things that I don't typically see, right? Especially with web traffic. Okay, I'm going to commonly see 443 encrypted traffic going to websites. I'm going to see also those sites maybe even trying to connect on port 80. Probably won't see a ton of traffic there anymore. So many sites have flipped to TLS port 443. However, something I'm really going to keep my eye on is the amount of traffic I see, and then those weird port numbers. So 447, my eye's gonna go there. That looks like a kind of a port that I might want to take a little closer look at. Also, if I come over here, I can also see a little bit of spike activity. Okay, so something happened here, and then I see that traffic again. Okay, and I can even focus on that port if I want to. I can just go ahead and click 447, and that's where I see a spike here. I see a spike here. I see a couple other spikes, and I didn't set a filter there, but that just showed me on my graph. Okay, there's my weird activity. If I go ahead and click port 80, I can see, okay, I have some port 80 traffic, which really that might catch my attention as well, simply just because there's so much anymore that's going over that's encrypted. Okay, so that might catch my attention. So, all right, so I have location. Here I've got usage of port number, and I'm going to keep my eye on weird, right? Bytes in and out, that's always useful because then I can get an idea of how much is coming and going. But as I go down on this dashboard, this is where I can start to see, okay, not just port number, but where is that traffic physically going? Okay, so down on this dashboard, okay, I got some traffic. Those bad guys in the United States, they're trying to do some nefariousness, If I come up here, okay, it looks like KH, we were looking at yesterday, it's coming from Cambodia on port 8082. Okay, so these are things that I'm just going to be interested in. So it's not just the port number, it's also the server and also where it's coming from. I got some Indonesia traffic. Okay, great, but let's go ahead and take a closer look. So I see I've got some interesting port numbers. I've got some unusual activity in terms of where it's going in the world. But now what is it? What's actually happening? What's being done here? And if I come down here to my return codes, this is a useful spot as well, because here, now I can actually see some of the URL I can actually see the URLs and even any file names that were accessed. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and focus on this one down here in the bottom. Okay, so I have imagepaper.png, all right? And if I come over here, that's a 163, so I can see, or I'm sorry, 162, there's my address. And I can even relate that up above. Okay, this is port 80. That might catch my attention. There's a file that's being accessed over clear text. Also cat bomber, all right? So this might be something I wanna look at. So, okay, so me being a packet head, it's fantastic. It's allowing me to just narrow down into things that look strange and easily do some of that filtering with the IOTA. That's a huge plus for me, because if I'm dealing, again, I mean, the other presenters have mentioned it as well. If I'm dealing with a terabyte of traffic, this is a tough thing to start to get my head around if I'm just doing this from the packet level. However, a huge feature for me is once I can identify this, see, I can start to set these filters, right? So I could just say, okay, let's go ahead and filter on this server, for example. And this is where I can see some of that, these files that are being accessed. And that was just one click so far. Rick, I've only clicked on the screen one time. And then I can come over here to download PCAP, right? One click, one button. I can download PCAP. And sorry, you knew it was going to happen, everybody, because you're looking at my screen. Let's go jump into Wireshark real quick. So let's go ahead and get a handle on why that could have caught my attention. Well, if I come down here, actually in this profile in Wireshark, I actually have a profile that looks for strange things going on in file names. All right. So here's one of, this one jumps out at me because if I take a look at that so-called file that was being accessed, imagepaper.png. So my machine is going out and saying, hey, give me this PNG file. Well, if I come down to the response code, if I look at the clear text there, you can actually see MZ, this program cannot be run in DOS mode. This is actually a binary. This is an executable file. So under the file name of being an image, right? So in this malware, this user actually accessed, I mean, there's a few other conversations we don't have the time to go into in this webinar, but I'm going out and I'm downloading this file that IOTA flagged me about. And I was able to see that this is actually a binary. It's an executable. This user is downloading. When this thing executes, then I'm able to go and see that I'm actually starting to exfil data out to Indonesia, or where I can't remember the exact country code. But to back up, how did I get to this single packet that matters? One click with IOTA. I just had to take this trace file, pump it out there, use these dashboards, help me to whittle it down. And then I was able to export it back out to Wireshark in a much more simple way. So for me, that really goes back to the power of the tool and helping and it complementing the analysis that I would do with any other tool.
Cool, thanks a lot, Chris. Nice demo there, and also some interesting pointers on what specific types of traffic to look for. But I think it also speaks quite well that you showed how you can, just an example of how you, for instance, place IOTA into your workflow. So as you've seen, it's quite a flexible device. So you can use it as, let's say, a dedicated device capturing data in your network. But if you have any other packets or trace files of interest, you can just import data. You can export it. You can always go back to the packet inspection in Wireshark, and yeah, basically find ways to place it in your specific workflow. I guess as with any tool, right? You have to find how to use it and get used to it. And
yeah, and I think that's something that I've appreciated about ProfitTap and specifically with the IOTA. It's not, we're not saying it replaces Wireshark. However, it strongly complements. First of all, it's doing the capture piece. It's doing it at line rate. It's allowing us to get a whole lot more data. But the analytics that it brings to the party makes our job as packet heads way easier. So that's, I think, the power of the tool.
Right. Yeah, and it's great to get feedback from the field from guys like you to see, of course, what your workflow is. You've been doing this for a long time, and yeah, from there I think we can build a product that fits the market, let's say. So I'm just gonna go through the chat for a second. I see, John, you've been answering a couple of questions already. Is there any question that you would like to maybe share your screen for? Let me see if I can claim the screen.
Did you want me to share my screen, Rick?
Yeah, it was a question. I see you have been asking some or answering some questions, so I'm not sure if there's any question in specific or in particular that you wanted to maybe answer publicly. You sharing your screen?
Oh, sorry. I'm going fast through all these questions, trying to get everybody answered here.
Right. Yeah.
So let me back up here through these.
So I can see some of the questions are regarding integration with CloudShark.
Yeah, so we covered the pre-capture filter question. Right now, the IOTA doesn't have integration with CloudShark, although CloudShark, you pretty much just upload your PCAPs to it and use it for storage and and you can do some analysis up there, but we don't have an integration feature per se between the two.
No, we do have it with ProfiShark, I think, but not with IOTA. So with ProfiShark, it's possible to upload directly into to store directly into CloudShark.
Good point.
But this is not an option yet in IOTA. But as you mentioned, it's possible to upload them manually there.
Yeah, and there was another question about turning on and off a name resolution, which right now is not an option, except that I know they're working on kind of a host file solution where you can override local device names and provide your own names on devices. That feature's not out quite yet, though. Signature. Right. Is it possible to provide signature-based rules to match malicious traffic? I put a pretty lengthy response to that. Right now, let me reshare my screen. You have the ability. The IOTA does do some layer 7 fingerprinting. So if I come in, let's look at the bandwidth graph. When I come down here, it's doing some of this layer 7 fingerprinting right here. It's IDing what it thinks the traffic is. And when I put my cursor on it, it tells me what fingerprints it's able to determine. And not only in this graph, but there's a filter up here called layer 7 protocol name. And that also tells you what fingerprints it's seeing in the traffic. Here's my DNS fingerprints. There's HTTP fingerprints. Here's TLS fingerprints. And I can drill into like who's on Pandora, for example, and it will narrow that down for me. Now, I could combine this filter with IP addresses and port numbers and other protocols to get a complex filter. And that complex filter could end up being a really nice little fingerprint. But one other thing that's important to mention the IOTA does, it's really good for engineers who are savvy, is, I'm going to share my screen again, is this BPF here. So not a lot of people ask me about this, but this is a very powerful feature, the Berkeley packet filter format. So you can go in here and you can write your own capture filter in Berkeley packet format, and what it will do is it will work in combination with whatever time frame you have up here. And when you download your PCAP, it will read this Berkeley packet filter and go through all of your packets and download you a capture file based on what you're filtering with this BPF filter. That's really powerful because in our Elastic database, we have metadata that we've captured, that we've extracted from these PCAP files that you can use then to filter back down into the PCAPs. But by using BPF, you can write, UDP position 1 and UDP position 3. So if you know exactly where in the bytes of your traffic you're trying to find specific things, or even in the payload or in the headers, you can write a BPF filter that will extract exactly that. And when you're getting into fingerprinting, traffic and signatures, if you know some of that information, you can write a BPF filter to go get that traffic.
So John, one thing that I think, on that screen and for anyone that's on the webcast that's using the IOTA, one point of, I don't want to say confusion, and that is that, the difference between the custom search, the filters, and the BPF, and in that the custom search affects the display on the screen only. The filters affect the display on the screen and what gets exported when you save the PCAP, and then the BPF only affects what gets exported, correct?
That is exactly correct. I'm glad you brought that up.
And it's just a little one, but when I first started using the IOTA, that was a kind of a challenging point. And once I understood that the custom search allows me just to change my graphs and my tables, anything in the panels, that's great, if I'm just using the panels. But then when I would go to save the PCAP, I ended up saving, 2 terabytes worth, or, 2 gigabytes worth of data. It's like, what the heck? And so, yeah, it gives you a way that if you want to apply that filter to the packet export, you need to make sure to use that filters option in the center.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Thanks for making that, Mike. So I think we're closing up to an hour already. So yeah, I just had one last question, maybe to Chris, since he always finds the right words to put this, but kind of to Chris, can you picture kind of where to place IOTA, kind of as a monitoring tool compared to other solutions out there?
Certainly. And going back to the security camera example, I'm not going to buy a bunch of security cameras and put them in a closet and under my sink. And, unless that's where I store my gold, I'm going to put it looking at main areas, main thoroughfares. Where is my traffic going? Where is it likely that an attacker would try to get in? So those main feeds going out to the internet, I'd want to watchdog any important services. So again, pointing back to the IOTA, being at a price point where I don't have to just have one in one place. I can put them in my key locations and I can have a good coverage of my traffic. Of course, I'm not going to capture everything everywhere all the time. I mean, nobody does that, right? I mean, that wouldn't necessarily be as useful, but we just want to make sure that we're getting those key locations and that we're watchdogging the crown jewels of the company, if you will.
Yeah, great. Thanks for summarizing that. I think it's always nice to hear your analogies, like the analogy with the security cameras. So I think for this is a great point to, let's say, end the webinar. I think we've given a good overview of what IOTA can do and some real life examples. So to everybody, thank you all very much for joining the webinar today. I really hope that you enjoyed this more informal style where we could just go back and forth between each other. And yeah, I hope you learned a thing or two. So let us know what you thought, what you think. And yeah, hope to see you all in the next one. And
thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming.
Thanks, Rick.
Great to
Thank
be
you
here,
very
everybody.
much.
Thanks for coming.
We're making a recording of this, so we'll try to host this on our YouTube, and of course we'll let you know once it's out there. So thanks again, and wish you all the best. Have a great day.